I had a question or two about the Kadron turbo setup here, and the gentleman was asking what I did to make it work, and I think it's just a little easier. I did try to explain it in the comment that he wrote, but I figure sometimes it's just easier to do that with a video. So the main thing that made it kind of work here is I boost reference the float bowl chamber by extending the vent tube. And as you can see, stock Kadron, the vent tube comes up through this little channel here, and it's normally just open right there. And what I did was I took a piece of aluminum tubing, the same size, and extended it up here. And I flared the end to try and be able to, the camera's not adjusting too good on that, but you know, just extended it up into the direct air path, and then I safety wired it to my air cleaner stand. And then for the actual carburetor, this is how I built the hat. Okay, you could do this a different way. I'm sure you could use just like a rubber coupler if you want, whichever works for you. This is just what I did. I used a 3-inch outside diameter piece of exhaust tubing, and from my memory I think that's 4 inches tall. I would have probably went 5. I would have went a little taller, but I believe that was about 4 from my memory. And then for the bottom section here, I had to cut little grooves in it to go over where the bolts are here. I should have just ground down the bolts. If I did it again, that's what I'd do. But this is just the bottom section of an air cleaner, of the Kadron air cleaner, and I welded it to the tube, and then I cut in a spot for a hole, and then this is just the top of the Kadron air cleaner, and then I connected, you know, all the piping together. So the air comes in through the hat right here, which goes on top. Get it out here, and then as you can see, this is up in the direct air path now instead of being on the side. And what I'm trying to do there is trying to pressurize the float bowl so that when you build boost in here, that the air pressure will build up slightly before in the float chamber to blow the fuel through the jets, so it will still kind of act like normal aspirated. What it kind of does is it's equalizing all the pressures. So the carburetor should still function like it did when it was normal aspirated, because you'd have atmospheric pressure on the float bowl, and you have atmospheric pressure in this area above the jet stack. Well, when you put boost above the jet stack, you need to have boost in the float bowl chamber so that the fuel can be drawn out, because it's still going to operate off vacuum down here because of your venturi. So that's how I got the carburetors to still function normal. The next problem you'll run into is you need to have your fuel pressure higher than your boost pressure. So Kadrons usually like to run at like 3 pounds of fuel pressure, sometimes 1.5, depending on your setup. So the way to get around that is either have a electric fuel pump that has a boost pressure, boost reference fuel regulator, or you can go on the cheaper way to do it, like I did, and the stock fuel pump has little vents on the bottom of the diaphragm, so when the diaphragm's moving up and down, that the air trapped under there won't cause it to bind up. So it's got a vent on each side of this particular model, and I just drilled out the hole, tapped it, and I used a pipe thread fitting in there. And then the other side, it had 2 vent holes on this particular model. I just plugged that off with a piece of pipe thread plug. So it was 1/8 inch tap is what I used for that. And so now I'm running boost pressure from my manifolds. This goes over and ties into the manifolds where the balance tube does on the carburetors. So when I get boost into the manifolds here, I'm going to pull the carburetor back up here. When the carburetor sees, this thing's going to fall, sees boost at the bottom of the manifold here, it will send that boost pressure around into that tubing and put pressure on the bottom of that diaphragm And what that does is it kicks up the pressure inside the fuel pump. So basically, if you run 5 pounds of boost in the bottom of the manifold here, if you're getting 5 pounds of boost here, you're putting 5 pounds of boost on the bottom of that fuel pump diaphragm, which, if let's just say you had 3 psi of fuel pressure anyways, it's going to kick it up to 8 psi. And what that does is that keeps fuel pressure actually going into the float bowl. Because if you had 5 pounds of boost through here and you had 3 pounds of fuel pressure, this right here, this modification will put boost into the fuel float chamber. And if you don't have more than boost pressure, when that needle valve drops down and opens up, it's going to blow the fuel that's in the bottom here up and out, just like in an aerosol can. So that's the modifications I did. I also took a little bit of timing out. Usually 25 degrees total timing. I took it back just a little bit. It was like 25, 26 degrees total advance. So nothing drastic there. I did not lock the distributor. It's still advanced and de-advanced just like normal. I just limited it because my distributor didn't have a full advanced curve already anyways. Something's a little goofy with that thing, so I just ran a little less internal timing, and then it went all the way up to about 25, 26. So, and I don't know if he didn't ask about the turbocharger. What I would recommend is the turbo I was using was off a diesel car. I'd recommend getting one off a gasoline car if you're doing the junkyard setup. And the reason being is the diesel turbo didn't really want to spool in the lower gears. First, second gear, it was a real big dog. It didn't like to spool up, so it had a lot of lag. And then once it started getting a good load on it in third and fourth, it would start spooling up, and it boosted up to about 7 psi is what I was running before I just took the car apart. Now, what I did for a seal here, because like I say, I had to cut those little grooves here. If I were to do it again, I'd grind the bolt down. Is the little quart gasket wasn't enough of a seal. So what I did was over here. Oh man, I got stuff everywhere. I went to the store and got a big thick rubber overflow washer, which is for your tub drain. I don't know where that gentleman's from, so plumbing may be a little different in different regions of the world. But it's an overflow washer is what it's called, and it's right where your vent is on your tub, near the top there, and it goes on the back side. It's like $1 or $2, and that's what I use for the gasket between the carburetor and the hat. So hopefully that answers his question. I figured it would be easier, and sometimes it's more understandable to just show in a video than actually trying to explain it. With this system here, I did not have a return line because the fuel pump only put out the pressure it needed when it had boost, and it only put out the stock pressure when it was not on boost. So, and also the turbo was mounted a little bit low on my setup here. If I did it again, I'd try and mount it higher. So I just drained my oil back into a deep sump. So there's nothing special there. And then as far as oil pressure, I just tapped it off of the oil pressure sending unit. I did not drill the case like I was originally going to. Let's see if I can get that a little better here. And I just used the T. It's all American pipe thread. I know the car is metric, but it works just as well. If you're in that part of the world where you have metric, all the better. So just ran oil from there, and that worked great, and still kept my stock sending unit. As far as the motor goes, it's all stock. There's nothing special in my engine combination. I know the gentleman said he had like an 1835 or something like that with a 110. That cam will work with it. That should be a good little combination if you get yourself a decent little turbo and blowing through the Kadrons. I will admit, though, I don't think the Kadrons would have the absolute power that a set of duals would. A set of 40 Delortos or 44 Webers or something like that. These are going to be a restriction. So I'm kind of at the end of where I just wanted to do it to see if it could be done, and it works. I haven't ran into any type of fuel problem. The only thing I'd say is make sure your fuel float level is set good, because when you're putting more fuel pressure and or boost in there, I think that's where you're going to have a problem if your float level is way high. Once that needle and seat opens up to put in there, it's going to shoot it out real quick, and you could possibly overflow where the gasket is, because these gaskets aren't really that great of how they sit. So probably make sure your float level is just a little bit, on the lower side. Probably be my recommendation. But like I say, try it all out first, see what you can do. And this is just, I think, 5/16 size. I don't remember exactly. You can go to a hardware store, you take the top with you and put in there. I know he said he has a set of Kadrons, and you'll get a little bit of increase in power. It's not going to be a rocket ship. Like I say, I wasn't running enough boost to make it faster. You could definitely feel an improvement though, especially in the upper gears with the turbo I had. I think a different turbocharger would make it a much funner car in the bottom end. And but if you're on a budget, there's no reason this can't be done. And like I say, as far as plumbing too, I've seen people use PVC. I probably wouldn't do it off the turbocharger coming up, but on top of the hats, I would probably try that. You could get a piece of PVC to slide over here, a whole lot cheaper than you can buy exhaust tubing. And you might, if you're just wanting to see how it will work, do it in PVC first, and then switch over to exhaust tubing or aluminum tubing, whichever your budget can afford afterwards. I wouldn't see any problem in doing that. The carburetor hats didn't get hot. It was the pipe coming down to the turbo at the turbo actually got a little heat. Not enough to melt PVC yet, but that's where some of the main heat was generated. So hopefully that brings a little light, because I did realize I never really made a full video of the turbo system. And hopefully that helps some people out that are thinking about doing it. And hopefully you all have a good day. Alright.